Hey guys, Anjanette here coming to you about Chapter 8. Once again, I hope everyone is staying well and being healthy with dealing with this whole pandemic that we got going on. And we're going to discuss some things in Chapter 8. So let's get to it. The chapter was really packed full of lots of facts, information, research studies, all that stuff. So I'm going to focus on two other aspects of the chapter, and we're going to discuss those a little bit. One thing that I thought was very interesting that to me speaks volumes as to what we have going on now is the concept of television and young children. And what are your thoughts? How do you feel about this? Do you think it's good, bad, ugly? So on and so forth. A little bit later in the semester when we talk about communication, I will show you guys a little bit of what I've found regarding television, different apps, different programs on YouTube, and how they claim to help children talk, and what all that looks like. But anyway, so let's talk about television and young children sitting in front of a TV for 3 hours a day and just sitting there and watching, and what thoughts does that bring to your mind? I know personally, this is a time where we're all using social media, Zoom, YouTube, Google Meets to connect, to have conversations because we're all so distant and trying to, stay healthy and stay away from each other. So one thing that I think is very interesting is how this has changed over the past 3 weeks, really, from when this really started hitting Georgia pretty hard with this virus and whatnot. Since, March 12th, I believe, was Rochelle's last day in her elementary school. And since then, the only way she's been able to communicate with her teacher is, via Google Meets. She'll have conversations with her friends. She'll FaceTime with her friends. She'll talk to her friends, call them on the phone, obviously using my phone, and what that looks like. And the same with Jacob. The last time he was able to actually see his classmates in person was on March 12th. And ever since then, they've been at home, talking to people on the phone, that type of thing. So yeah, just gonna kind of get your ideas and thoughts and opinions about what television looks like, and if it's, if you think it's beneficial for children birth to age 3, if you don't think it's beneficial. So if you'll please write about that in your discussion for Chapter 8, that would be great, and that's how you can get credit for watching this. Awesome. Another thing that I thought was, going back to the whole television thing, when we brought Rochelle home from the hospital, I was like, she's not going to watch any TV, and we were very adamant about that for a good first year and a half of her life. We were fortunate in the way our little house was set up, is that we could see the TV from where we were eating dinner, but it was so far away that we didn't turn it on while eating dinner. And then we actually ended up moving right as her first birthday. So we moved on a Friday, and her first birthday was on a Sunday. And we were then able to sit at the dining room table, and you can't see the TV at all. Like, you could hear it if it's on. So we'll do a lot of listening to Pandora and that kind of stuff while eating dinner, just to have like background music and whatnot. And we quiz the children, who sings this song or whatever. But it's good vocabulary conversations that we have around the mealtime table, but we're not sitting there eating mindlessly as we're staring at the TV. Which I think definitely increases vocabulary. It increases interactions with each other. It increases just, bonding. Like, I think we have a tighter bond because of that. But anyway, so yeah, that's the deal with watching TV and young children, in my opinion. I'm definitely not for it at all under normal circumstances. I know right now things are not really normal, so there is more TV watching in a lot of households around America, and I totally get that. I kind of think parents get a free pass for this whole time that we're trying to deal with this and everything. But yeah, I just think conversations and vocabulary and social interactions are built with interacting with others, actual face-to-face conversations, not watching something on TV. And yeah, being outside. Let's go play outside. Let's get dirty. Let's get muddy. I'm all about that. But anyway, so there's that. And then another thing that I wanted to bring up with the chapter was about music and listening to music. And if you think that's beneficial, this is not a discussion question, just to kind of get you thinking about it. But, when you think of music and hear music, what kind of feelings does that invoke in you? Like I know you can be driving down the road and you hear a song come on the radio that you haven't heard in years, and it kind of takes you back to where you were when that song was popular, or when that song first came out, or the first time you heard that song. And then it just has that kind of memory connection, So just think about that, and think about, at some point, if you do end up, having a child or in utero, or with someone that has a child in utero, like, do you want them to listen to music when that baby's born? Do you want them to listen to music, and just kind of think about that. So, another thing I want to talk about, not in the chapter, but actually with the spanking article that you'll write your position paper on. Spanking is a hot topic. I know there's a lot of people that are either strongly for it or strongly against it. There's not a ton of people that are like kind of in the middle. It's like, oh, I think it's sometimes okay, not okay. I will tell you, from a mother standpoint, I remember the first time that Rochelle received a spanking. She was right at like 2.5 years old. We were actually visiting a loved one in the hospital, and her cousin that's 13 months older than her were laying on the floor in the hospital. Not the best place to lay, but that's what they were doing. They were in the hospital room. They were laying on the floor, and they had their legs, they were on their backs, and they had their legs propped up on the wall. So like laying like this, body, legs, feet, right? And they start kicking the wall to the hospital room. And my husband was like, you're not going to do that. You need to stop. And they kept doing it, kicking the wall. And I remember vividly Josh saying, if you do that again, you're going to get a spanking. That means I'm going to take you into the bathroom and I'm going to hit you on the bottom. And I was like, oh, we've never talked about this. We've never discussed this. What's going on? And Rochelle looked at her dad, and she looked at her cousin, and they giggled, and they continued to kick the wall. And guess what happened? He picked her up, he took her into the bathroom of the hospital room, and he gave her a spanking. Not bare bottom. She had pants on and underwear and that type of stuff. But he hit her 3 times on the bottom. You're not going to do that. And I remember the cry that she let out. It was like, I'm devastated, I remember it very vividly, like it was yesterday, and this was 5 years ago. And since then, she's probably received, I'm going to say maybe 3-4 spankings, not a whole lot. A lot of parents I know use spankings as like a safety thing, kind of like how it talked about in the article, where if you run out into traffic, you're going to get a spanking, I think a lot of parents also use spankings like to get children's attention. Like I've known many parents in the past that have threatened. If you do that again, I'm giving you a spanking. If you do that again, I'm giving you a spanking. If you do that again, I'm giving you a spanking. And it's like, okay, they've said this 17 times and there's been no spanking given. They just talk about it. One thing that Josh and I are both very consistent and adamant about with our parenting is that whatever we say we're going to do, right? Like if we say, if you do X, Z is going to happen, then when they do X, we have to make sure Z happens, right? It's got to be something that's legitimate, that we can make happen, all that kind of stuff. Because I think it's very important for children to understand that what you say you mean, and you're going to follow through with that, right? So don't throw out these threats that you can never follow through with, because that accomplishes nothing from a parenting aspect, and from a teacher standpoint as well. Like we believe in a lot of natural consequences at the Child Development Lab, where if a child takes their cup of milk and they throw it on the floor, well, if they did that on purpose, they're not going to get any more milk, right? That's the end of their milk. But if they spill it and it's an accident, and it's very obvious when things are accidents or when they do it on purpose, then you'll be like, oh, let's clean it up. We'll get you some more milk, that type of thing. I know I've had parents reach out to me about, at dinner time, my son just starts throwing the green beans across the table and he thinks it's so funny. I'm like, then clearly he's done eating, right? If he was still hungry, he would be eating those green beans, not throwing them across the table. So just keep that in mind, as you go through seeing children interact with their parents, when at some point, if you become a parent, what that looks like. It's very important to have natural consequences and things that you can say, yes, this is going to happen. This is what it's going to look like. I know it's hard for young children if they've never heard what a spanking is and they hear you're going to get a spanking. They don't know what that is. To some people that could be, oh, we're going to go to a party. I don't know. I have no idea what a spanking is, So I think it was important that Josh informed her before he gave her the spanking, if you do this, this is what's going to happen, and she looked at him. She did it. She kept kicking the wall, and he got up and he gave her the spanking. So yeah, just keep that in mind. And I can't wait to read people's responses on the spanking article and see, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings? What are your beliefs? One thing that I'm very shocked about that a lot of people do, some parents do, is when a child hits another child and then that parent punishes the child that was hitting by spanking them. So it's like, hitting hurts, hitting is wrong. I'm going to show you this by hitting you. And to me, that sends a lot of mixed messages to children, and they don't know and they can't really comprehend, except for the fact that, okay, you're bigger, you're taller, you have more power, and it's okay for you to hit me, but it's not okay for me to hit my friends, or for me to hit my brother, or me to hit my sister, or for me to hit my cousin, or for me to hit the dog, So I think that's where it's really important to verbalize this whole concept of hitting hurts, hitting's not okay. Look at them, they're crying, they're upset. How can you make them feel better? And that type of thing. Because as we know, two wrongs don't make a right, for sure. And I know I'll tell you a story about my brother-in-law, who actually just turned 12 on Tuesday. So I have a 12-year-old brother-in-law, and he's a very strong-willed child. I love him a lot, but can be a difficult child. And I know he was like 7, and him and his dad, my father-in-law, were outside raking leaves, raking leaves. And Benjamin goes, oh, Dad, this is terrible. You should have just given me a spanking and got it over with, and he was the kind of child that a spanking didn't faze him, because he knew after the spanking, it was over and he could go back to doing whatever he wanted to do, right? So clearly the spanking didn't impact his behavior. It was just something that he had to tolerate for that short amount of time. And then he could go back and continue to goof off or play or whatever it was that he was doing that his parents didn't approve of. So I think that's very interesting, that it's clear that if physical touch is your love language, and I don't know how much you guys know about love language and all that stuff, there's physical touch, gifts, words of affirmation, quality time. But yeah, if physical touch is your love language, then spanking is going to hurt a whole lot more than gifts. If gifts is your love language, then if someone takes something away from you, that's going to hurt a whole lot more. words of affirmation, if that's your love language, if someone verbalizes, I'm really disappointed in you because you did this, that's going to hurt a lot more than spanking. So yeah, just keep those things in mind as you read the article, think about it. I'm really excited about hearing your responses on the position paper. I would like for my daughter to tell you a little bit about what she thinks about spanking. She is 7 years old, and so I will get her, and then we'll have a little conversation with her, and then you guys can watch that. All right. Thanks again. Stay well. Wash your hands. And thank you again for watching. Okay.